Welcome in, everybody, to the entertainment from the 573, and we got a special podcast. I don't know if I should try to attempt my Hagrid right here, but we have a Harry Potter podcast series that we got going on here. The first of 3 parts, where we're going to be kind of talking about the movies from a reader and a non-book reader perspective. So joining me in doing that, now that he's finished from killing a man, killing a teacher with his bare hands in his first year at Hogwarts, it's Peter Lewis. Peter, that's a wild turn of events right there.
Listen, it was in self-defense. I know we're in the UK. I don't think that American stand your ground applies, but I'm making an attempt with it.
Yeah, literally, you turned a man into dust. You know, you pulled out the reverse card. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So, this is also probably a good time early on in the recording. If you see me looking up, I got the Tennessee game on in the background, keeping an eye on things. So, if you see any kind of excitement or if you see any kind of depressed look, that's what's going on right now. And right now, it's kind
This
of
is the
mixed.
this is a bit of a rare dual entertainment and views podcast going on simultaneously.
Yeah. So we might have a breakdown here at the end of this pod where I just completely break down if Tennessee loses this game, which on
Um,
the day we're recording this, weird day in college football that we're going to be talking about later on views. So it's been a weird one. So yes, we are talking about the Harry Potter movies, and I was talking to Peter pre-show, and I thought we had done one early on here and around the COVID years with Grant, one of my best friends, and it looked like I don't know what happened. It maybe got lost in the files. I'm not completely sure what happened. It's not there. So I guess this is unofficially the first Harry Potter podcast that we've kind of dived into. So yeah, how about that? I'm surprised it kind of took this long for it to happen. And this was your idea, uh, with you starting the movies. And I'm like, oh man, don't give me hope. Don't get me excited, man. Because I'm like,
yeah.
if we get to do this, I'm gonna be ready to go. I'm gonna be pumped to do it.
The short story was around my birthday in June. I was supposed to go to Vegas for vacation, but my 29th birthday gift was a bad like sickness that was primarily fatigue. So I was like, okay, a 4 hour flight to Vegas is probably a bad idea. And it was like 115 average temperature that week. So we were just
Ooh,
like, yeah, let's
yeah,
let's call it now. Southwest refunds all the money, yada yada. So, but I still had the PTO, so I was like, yeah, what's something that's been on my list that I now have actual time for? And because I've been going to the Universal Park so much with my boy Colin from SEMO in the past couple of years, interacting with Harry Potter stuff there, I was like, you know what? I saw these movies when I was younger via the glory days of Blockbuster. Uh, for the kids watching, before the internet was good, we had to physically go out to these stores called Blockbuster and rent a movie. And if you didn't return it within their
yeah,
time period, they would destroy your parents with late fees.
yeah,
We used to be a country, is what I'm trying to say.
yeah,
But honestly, so yeah, pretty much every Christmas season when we had time from school, that was usually one that when my dad would take me on whatever days, I would definitely get just to be like, well, the kids at my school every now and then talk about it, so I might as well understand what's going on. I did see the first one in theaters. I do remember that because friends in Pittsburgh took me, the friend's family, and I was confused and didn't know what was going on. I never liked fantasy. That's all. That's been a thing that's kind of been dying recently, but still fairly, I guess, fairly true to an extent. So, yeah, I saw this movie. I think I have like an early Harry Potter Lego set that if I look up the minifigure price, it's probably worth like $5,000, something stupid like that, which is in a probably in a landfill somewhere in Missouri.
yeah. You actually got the leg up on me. I did not see any of the movies until the sixth one in theaters.
Hmm.
So it took me a long time. I'll go ahead and tell the story now. Sixth movie came out on what, '09. So I was around 14, and the fandom was still kind of new to me, a couple years in. So uh I'd wanted to see it, and of course 14 really couldn't get anywhere. So I was like, "Hey Dad, can we go see Harry Potter?" And I remember it was kind of like, yeah, I don't know. And I think my sister, the plot in all shows where where you make like a PowerPoint or something to convince your parents to do something. I think she actually did that or something like that, or she made a compelling case where she's like, "Can you at least take them?" So that's what happened. And I think he ended up really liking the movies, and so he's a fan of the movies, not the books, but he hadn't read them. So it started there, and in fact the movie I saw really early on was one that we're going to talk about was the second one, but it was on cable. I remember it being on either like Disney Channel or ABC, and just seeing parts of it and being like you, kind of confused about like, okay, what's going on here? There's a giant snake. We got two guys here down in a chamber. What's going on here? Um, so I was really kind of confused there at the moment, but yeah, the books. I mean, to go into them, started them when I was 12, zoomed past them. It was when Deathly Hallows, the last book, came out. So it was like perfect timing. And I just immediately fell in love with that world, the magic of it. And even though the magic is a fun part of it, there's also the magic of the kind of themes that it has and kind of teaches throughout that seven book storyline. So it was it's been a fandom that has really kind of taken a backseat, I think, to Marvel and all that stuff. I mean, rightly so, because Marvel has really kind of dominated the zeitgeist, and it feels like Warner's and HBO are kind of like sitting on this Potter IP, which we'll talk about in part three, I think, and talk about the show. But it really kind of feels like they haven't hit on it. So we're going to talk about the first three movies, and we're going to start with Sorcerer's Stone. And if this movie, just like Chamber, felt like faithful adaptations of the book, from what I remember. And there was a couple stuff that was, not put in, but it seems like as the movies got later on, not only did they get darker, but they also got a little bit. They also changed. Okay, I just saw UT hit a big pass play. That's why I was. I wasn't kidding when I mentioned that. I'm going to be keeping an eye on that. They just had a big pass play, but I just remember they also, because the books got longer, not a whole lot of stuff was put in. So with shorter books, you can probably put in a whole lot more in these types of movies. And Chamber, one of the shorter books, I think it might be the shortest. Ironically, it's the longest movie out of all of them, which is it's kind
Yeah,
of crazy to think about because
it was
that's the
funny because
movie.
upon I should probably note it's probably obvious. Me being Peter Lewis, I have not read the books. I don't read books to begin with because I'm too stupid for that stuff. I just stare at a page and just something like a word or two will go in, but not the whole thing. So it's a problem. But yeah, so basically, I went into this where I guess like 2 or so months ago, basically knowing I had seen these movies in the past, but like memory wise, there was nothing. It's like
Yeah.
saying, yeah, I saw the original 2005 Fantastic Four. I remember like maybe a couple scenes, but like I could not tell you about the movie. It would have to be a true rewatch. I don't know why that's the only example on top of my head because all the Harry Potter movies are a much higher quality than the 2005 Fantastic Four. I think
Yeah.
I haven't seen it in forever, but I just assume. But yeah, I remember seeing that. I was like, Philosopher Sorcerer Stone went by pretty quick, and then I saw Chamber Secrets was like almost 3 hours. Like, I'm dying here. I don't think I could do that.
Yeah, I think it's ironically, I think the shortest book is the longest movie, and the longest book, Order of the Phoenix, I think is the shortest movie of all them. So there's a funny sense of irony right there with the books, but yeah, Sorcerer's Stone. I'll tell you what. Starting with this movie, thinking about it from a book perspective, and a whole lot of it was not touched on, and at this time only four books were out. So you really had that twist there with Goblet of Fire, and that was it. And it was kind of like a Game of Thrones situation right there, where the books weren't finished, when Game of Thrones was coming to a close, and so they were just like, "Yeah, George R. R. Martin, come on, what are you doing?" So the books weren't finished at that point, and they were at Goblet, so they had no idea of kind of like the foreshadowing and stuff. But like thinking about it in the book, early on when we get that scene at Privet Drive with Dumbledore and McGonagall, I look back in the book. Peter, there's so much foreshadowing in the early pages of that book about the end game. It's nuts. Like I pulled out the book today, looked in chapter one, and see a couple quotes. McGonagall, I suppose Voldemort is really gone. Dumbledore, it certainly seems that way. And Dumbledore kind of plays off as like, maybe, maybe not. And I think at that time he did know that he was going to come back. And then there's also some Dumbledore stuff about like him having that type of power that of Voldemort having that type of power, but Dumbledore's like, well, McGonagall's like, oh, you're too noble to use them. But then there's two other ones that I think are really stand out because of what happens in Deathly Hallows and in books 5 through 7 is that McGonagall wonders, how did Harry survive? And Dumbledore's like, we can only guess. We don't know. When this man is fully aware, he probably knows in all likelihood. 99% he knows. And then the other part is when Harry is brought to the house by Hagrid, it's McGonagall looks at the scars like, can't you do something about it? And Dumbledore's like, even if I could, I wouldn't. Scars can come in handy. And I'm like, yeah, they did. They certainly did in that last one. And so I'm like, there's just so much goodness there. In like you couldn't use all that in the movie. You didn't have the foresight there, but honestly, this movie and the first two, directed by Christopher Columbus, well-known director, uh, did The Home Alone, did Mrs. Doubtfire, and these first two books, while you could say they're certainly kind of children's films early on, but they brought in that magic, that wonder that I think you're supposed to feel when you enter that world, when you enter that series earlier on. So I think, Sorcerer's Stone, they did a good job of entering that world pretty early on and saying like this world is magical, literally and figuratively. It's a magical world.
Right. Because I think of what little I knew of Harry Potter coming in was the Rawlings idea of writing it was to, as the characters grow in the books, the readers will grow with it. So Sorcerer and Chamber are very much basic, stupid idiot, written for, stupid third graders or second graders like me around the time it came out. And then theoretically, as I would get smarter, I could understand the bigger concepts and words for Deathly Hollows. Problem with Rowling was she didn't realize I was stupid, so and couldn't read.
Yeah, it's like the movies and like the books that as they got later on, they went to those more complex themes, more, complex emotions, got a little bit darker, introduced a lot of different stuff that really kind of changed the tone of the series. Uh,
The
and
only
we'll
thing I
talk
would
about
say
Azkaban.
is
That kind of was kind of like the okay, we're getting darker now. It's gonna get a little bit more grown up. And credit to Corone for doing that, but yeah, definitely.
that's the thing is the feature films go because there's no director for the entire film. There's a lot of changes. Obviously, the Dumbledore actor,
Richard
Richard,
Harris.
hold on, just Richard Harris, unfortunately passed between 2 and 3, so there was the recast. Obviously, you're not going to be able to get a director of really any caliber to agree to a schedule like this, where the only off years they had were 03, 06,
That
because and 8.
I'm thinking Azkaban came out in '03, I think.
I thought
Goblet
it was 04. But,
and I think Goblet came out in '05. They didn't have anything in '06. I think you're right on there because Order came out in '07. And
we have
they didn't have
01.
anything in '08 because Prince
Yeah,
came
so
out
we
in
had,
'09.
yeah, so it's 01, 2, 4, 5, 7, 9, 10, 11.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's no way a director's going to do that, especially when later on Chris Columbus would have to go on to direct such classics as Christmas with the Cranks, I Love You, Beth Cooper, and the ill-fated Percy Jackson and and the Olympians.
Oof.
But my note for directors is, yeah, even though the tone of the story has to get darker, the way each changing director or directors kind of plays with it is a little different, but not too distracting. It's not like my Friday the 13th films where after
Mhm.
they brought Jason back to life, they were just like, "Oh, we don't care anymore. Just do whatever you want. We put him on a boat and say it's Manhattan. We don't care." They knew these would make money, so there was some care. And I guess I didn't really pay much attention to see if looks like David Heyman did all of the films. So yeah, at least there was a Kevin Feige like person maybe to be like, okay,
Yeah.
here's where the story is. Here's what I need you to do, but you can be a filmmaker to an extent.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. You can kind of get that feel, although, David Yates coming in, he really took the helm for those last, you know, four movies and three books. And he's done the Fantastic Beast movies. So he's done a whole lot of these films, and so when they brought him in, I guess you like we did on order, so you bring him in. I guess it's kind of like the Russo brothers in that regard because the Russos came on a little bit later on, and you like what they did is like, okay, we're gonna keep you on. You're gonna finish this thing out. We trust you. So
Mhm.
yeah, Sorcerer. This was this is a movie that again I probably saw on DVD. I didn't see it until later on. So it was kind of weird seeing it at that point where in about 07, 08 when I first started getting into it, it was the fifth movie and they were already like 15 or so. So it was kind of weird seeing them at that point. But Sorcerer's Stone, I'll tell you what, it's such a fun time. It's such a fun movie. Getting introduced early on to that magic, to Dumbledore, to Hagrid, and to all these cast of characters, and to which, listen, the casting for these movies, and starting here in book one, and movie one, it's just phenomenal with all the talent that they got. I don't know if we have time to run through all of it since they literally got a who's who of the best actors in Britain. It seems like so. They just really completely nailed it, and Sorcerers, it was such a fun time. It was such a fun time to get to experience, all the 2001-ness of this, the cheesy flashback with Voldemort killing the parents and like, that's oh, okay. Well, Tennessee got a pick. Okay. Oh boy. Oh, I think it's a pick six. Okay. A little bit too excited right there. Oh, it's a white guy defensive back. Oh, white guy defensive back touchdown. Let's go. Oh man. This is
Yeah,
what
Google is
happens when you do
slow
a
on
Tennessee
these.
game. But yeah, no. This movie early on, you really love to see all the new magical stuff, like seeing the Hogwarts Express. Um, you love to see you love to see the castle, that first introduction to the castle, where it's just like this. Oh boy, there's the castle when they're in the boats. So it was just seeing all the stuff that would become factors later on, just seeing all of that I think was fun. I think there's a couple other fun stuff have written in my notes here. And there are a couple of funny stuff, but you know, uh thinking about all the teachers that we see in these movies. Uh Year one, first teacher, Harry had for Defense Against the Arts, a plague disposition, was technically Voldemort. Voldemort was technically his teacher year one. And you know what? From the books, not bad. He had a good syllabus. He let him do stuff unlike Umbridge. So, Voldemort, maybe he should have gotten that teaching position. You know, um,
Well, one of the progressions I loved was that every year the Defense of the Dark Arts teacher had to be replaced because the previous year the teacher is either a jag, a fraud, cool, but a werewolf secretly, and we just had to like keep changing them every year until we're finally just like until we're finally
yeah.
just like, you know what? They're basically dropping out
Well, there's an
to go
in
kill a
book,
man.
there's an in book explanation for all that. Um, it happens in book six, and you kind of get the idea of it. So, and I could touch on this in book six, but since we're talking about, I'll go through it briefly. So, Dumbledore has Voldemort, a few years after he comes back, after he leaves Hogwarts, he's already kind of undergone some transformation. He comes back and asks for the Defense Against the Dark Arts job. And Dumbledore, fully knowing that he's undergoing that transformation, he's already got the early front runners, forerunners of the Death Eaters. He's like, "Nah, fam, I'm not giving you that job." And from that point on, he kind of cursed the job, because of that point on. So that's kind of why you have all these different teachers come in now. I don't know, with all those years between him asking and where the current timeline is, I don't know what happened. Did you just have a teacher every 40 something years or something like that? Uh, because I feel like if you're at that point, Dumbledore, you just need to step in. It's like, you know what, I got this. What's gonna happen to me? Um, but yeah, you know, the whole introduction into the magical world. Of course, the Dursleys. I mean, um, awful, just awful, right there. Um, and also really awful. You know what, Peter? Looking at this, seeing all those letters and knowing that Harry is a generational seeker, made the Gryffindor Quidditch team for the first time in over a century as a first year. He couldn't catch one of those thousands of letters that was hurtling in to the living room. It's like,
Just
how, my guy?
completely uninspired at that point.
Well, I guess to be fair, he didn't know he would be a seeker at that point, that he would be awesome at it. So I guess, in fairness, but yeah, no,
I just want to
watching
say,
Source.
Dudley's kind of living the dream there. That's a lot of birthday presents for a birthday.
Yeah, yeah, and you hear that line, 36, but last year I had 37. It's like, okay, yeah, you're spoiled. You're a spoiled brat right there. You deserve to be locked up in that enclosure at the zoo, which is probably not the best, but hey, with what he was doing, whatever. And Harry freed a snake. So I guess that's good, cause chaos,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
yeah,
The snake
no.
sounded happy.
Yeah, Snake was happy. He got to talk to the snake, which is a little bit bigger later on in book two. But yeah, no, Sorcerers I thought was a fun early entry into all that stuff. And of course, it got a little bit darker because you had Voldemort kind of in there as well, being on the back of Quirrell's head, which this is also in the book, and it would have been hilarious in the movies. But in the books, Fred and George, shout out to the legends that they are, to the Chaos Kings. In the book, they bewitch snowballs to bounce off of Quirrell's head, on the back of his head. So, in essence, they're hitting Voldemort with snowballs. It's just kind of a funny visual right there. It's like, here you got these two twins, and they're hitting the Dark Lord, the most evil wizard of them all. They're just like throwing snowballs at him. So, it's just like, it's funny.
I think overall the film itself does a good job at just giving you the base idea of what this world is. Again, you're making it sound like Philosopher's Stone was kind of to the point to begin with, so there wasn't really a lot to exclude for the most part. You probably could have added another 30 minutes on for like the all the scenes, but because as it goes on, one of my I guess slight complaints was this really just becomes a Gryffindor story, and even then, as they go on, it's really just a Harry, Ron, and Hermione story. Like Slytherin just becomes generic bad guy when it sounds like, yeah, sure, they're on the troublemaker side, but there's still, I guess, an ounce of good in the idea of Slytherin to an extent.
Yeah,
And if you're a Hufflepuff and Ravenclaw, just get wrecked, my guy. You ain't getting anything till like Luna comes aboard toward the very end,
we're not even till Cedric, until book four.
right?
Yeah. Fellow Hufflepuff here. Yeah. Not great.
Hufflepuff had nothing in these films other than
Yeah. And the
the
one time he gets killed.
yeah.
Which honestly,
One guy
that's kind
gets
of surprising. It took 4 movies, 4 books for a kid to get murdered in this place, the quote unquote safest place in the wizarding world. No safer place.
it's funny because as Philosopher's Stone, they're doing the sorting hat. They do, okay, here's Ron, I got another one of you. You're Gryffindor. Hermione, oh, you're smart, Gryffindor. There's this one girl who they put in Hufflepuff who I don't think comes up again unless she's in the background. I don't. It was funny. I was like, oh, I don't remember this character. I should remember her name as a Hufflepuff, and it's just like a random girl they introduce. It's like, okay,
Okay. I think I know who you're talking
movie.
about. Yeah. I think I know
Yeah,
who
I was
you're
like,
talking about. I think in the book she's related to somebody that works in the ministry that's actually one of the big players at Harry's trial, his so-called
mm,
trial in Order of the Phoenix. Um,
okay,
so I think that's why. But yeah, I mean, listen, and getting to see all those relationships form on the Hogwarts Express and see all them kind of form and how much trust they have in each other and it it's really was really wonderful to see all that formed really early on. And then also another thing I'm thinking about the effects of all that stuff too. Fluffy, the three-headed dog. Um, Hagrid. I'm thinking about there's other effects I'm probably thinking about. I know Quidditch had to be a special effect, and there's not a whole lot of Quidditch in these movies.
yeah. The budget for Quidditch was fairly impressive for 2001, but you can tell the troll suffered because the moment he came on, I was like, oh, this is 2001, baby.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. Yeah, this movie it was really fun getting to kind of experience it, you know, having the knowledge of the books, I guess, having the knowledge of all the seven of the books right now and just kind of picking stuff up. And yeah, the Quidditch stuff. Then go and piggyback off of that, Harry getting the broom. And I gotta tell you what, there's a podcast that brought this up, and I gotta bring it up here too. McGonagall buys Harry Potter a broom. NCAA, where are you at? Impermissible benefits here. We're not in the NIL era. So it's just like, you know what, McGonagall, she sees him out there, for on the broom for the first time. Is like, oh, I'm in trouble. It's like, nah, nah, my guy, you're gonna be this team's savior for the next 7 years. I'm putting you on the team, and I'm getting you a broom too, the fastest broom ever. Meanwhile, Neville's out here who nearly dies 4 times. Like, whatever.
Speaking of sports, Dumbledore straight up NASCAR rigs us at the very end after Ron, Hermione, and Harry lose what 150 points or something like that each.
Yeah.
Like Draco, I will say, Draco's a very good villain who develops kind of naturally. Like here, it's just like, oh, this is just the annoying kid in your class. And toward the end, it's like, I hope he gets Joffreyed. I haven't seen Joffrey die in Game of Thrones, but I heard it's coming and it's going to be glorious. So that's the only that's one of the things that keeps me watching that mess of a show right now. But anyway, at the very end, like I get he stopped Voldemort and all, but bruh, bruh, at the very end, because
Yeah,
Drago
that's
loses
like
150 points and Slytherin still is able to win. Like, yo, they pulled it out there, and even then, giving the points back to Harry, Ron, Hermione for all the reasons, they're still short. So he has to be like, Neville, you son of a gun, you've died like 17 times in this movie. But let's see, you showed
you.
bravery. Here's the extra
Yep.
10 to win. It's like, this is garbage. This is absolute garbage.
You know what? Shout out to Dumbledore for doing that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Oh, not
I am.
shout out. I was against that.
Yeah.
I was
Eh,
like, this is garbage.
yeah. It was like, Dumbledore. I see what you're doing here. It was like, no, we can't let Slytherin win this here. My guys, shut up. Harry killed a teacher who had Voldemort in the back of his head. Hermione, saved her friends. Ron played chess and fell 3 feet from the air and was a
Right.
drama queen about it.
Boo hoo.
Neville, let's see. You stood up to your friends, but you also got you, frozen in time for a second. So you get 10 points. So it's Dumbledore just rigging this thing. Oh, I love it. We can't let Slytherin win,
Favoritism.
but although Slytherin, I think, there's some like kind of I would say bigotry kind of thing with Slytherin because, early on you're kind of like you hear from Ron, there's no witch or wizard that ever went bad that wasn't in Slytherin. And, Snape, while there's in times in the books and not so much in the movies where he's just like a real jerk to people, real jerk to the students, he kind of, upends that kind of binary because he's kind of this gray character in which people are still arguing about, how good or how bad was he, you know, with what ultimately happened at the end. So people are still arguing about that. So yeah, no. Um, and looking at a couple other things that this movie didn't have at that end scene. Speaking of Snape, Snape actually played a bigger part of that group right there, where he had like riddle and potions and stuff like that, where which Hermione solved, and also Peter, you would have loved this guy. It is a well, actually a ghost. Peeves is just the ultimate chaos king and just like the ultimate wild card in which he just loves messing with students and just did that through all the 7 books. It was just like this guy was just causing chaos and trying to get students in trouble, and making fun of them.
You know what? I got Monty Python's John Cleese as headless Nick, just randomly just causing a ruckus. So I appreciate that. Snape is definitely my favorite character in all these movies, especially this one. Especially toward the end when the trio's making their little plan to figure out what's going on, and Snape just comes behind them and is just like just trolling. He's like, what are you Gryffindors up to?" And Harry's giving him that look, and he's like, "Oh wait, what are you up to? I was messing around. What are you doing?" I just love his tone, Alan Rickman's tone of change there. It's like, okay, time out.
Yeah,
I was BSing. Harry, what are you doing?
yeah. Rickman is so great in this role. I mean, he was. I think looking back on this, I think he was the only one to really kind of know the end game, especially for his character of what was going to happen. The only one that knew. And he was kind of playing off of that the whole time. And people were like, okay, why you make that decision? It's like, I'll never tell. You're gonna have to find out later. He was just, he was awesome in this role. And I think if I remember right, because if you look at Harry's parents in the Mirror of Erised, which I love, the mirror of desires essentially, and you see what you desire. Um, in that scene, Harry's parents, they look like they're in their 40s. No, when the books they actually died at 21, really young. Like they were like 4 years removed from Hogwarts, and Harry was only a year old at that point. So they were 21, and so I think the reason why they looked a little bit older was because you got Rickman in there, so maybe make them
Hmm.
around the same age. And I guess that's why you cast somebody like Gary Oldman and David Thewlis later on. But I mean, listen, if you get Alan Rickman, you get Hans from Die Hard. I guess so. Make it work.
It's a nightmare from 11 to 21 for poor Snape. He got cucked hard by James, and then immediately Lily's pregnant. Like, oh, Snape's like, you gotta be kidding me.
Yeah, that's one thing I wish they really didn't touch on in these movies was kind of like the how much Snape hated his father and how much his mom played a factor in Snape's kind of life right there early on, which I guess that's kind of like foreshadowing into, Deathly Hallows. But I really kind of wish they played off a little bit of that more here at the end. But I don't know. But yeah, those are a couple of things I kind of look at as like I wish they kind of did that. So but I mean, yeah, listen, first movie for Columbus, better than the other first movie he did in Percy Jackson. So and the technology was so much better at that point too. But with this one, he did a really good job bringing that world to life and bringing this cast together. Which, not to step on any toes, it's going to be really hard to do that in a TV series. So yeah, don't want to step on too many toes there because that's I think for part 3. I guess if you have any thoughts left on Sorcerer's Stone before you head to Chamber.
No, watching it at 29. I was kind of surprised 6-year-old me was not crazy about it. I feel like there would have been, again, fantasy's never going to sell for me too much, but there were aspects of it. I'm kind of amazed I wasn't like the train was swag.
Yeah. All right. Well, everybody, that's it for Sorcerers. We're going to go and head on into the Chamber of Secrets and talk about that film. All right, now on to Chamber. Uh, Talked about a little bit before. The shortest book turned into the longest movie coming out here. And Honestly, I mentioned this before. Seeing this it was kind of my first Harry Potter movie. Seeing this, I can understand why. And so, there's a lot of a majority of people kind of consider Chamber, and I think this one the weaker of the books and movies, even though both are still pretty good for the most part. It's just like out of the rest of the stories, it's still generally kind of weaker. There is some good stuff. There is some good foreshadowing for later stuff in the movies. Because at this point, 2002, I think this movie came out. Um,
Hmm.
I can't remember if book 5 had already come out. It might not have. So I think maybe these first 2 came out before book 5 was released, or maybe it was. I think Half-Blood Prince was released in '05, and then, Hallows, of course, in '07, so I don't know, but yeah, what do you think about Chamber?
Overall, yeah, I'm with you. Or with the consensus is probably, if I had to rank off the top of my head, this would probably be towards the end. It's a bit long-winded at times, and the ending with the Tom Riddle reveal with the letters, I was just like, oh, okay, this is a little much. I get this is a stupid kids film, but uh, even I have a breaking point. Also,
Yeah,
the whole storyline with Ginny. I mean, what a crazy introduction film wise for Harry's future wife. Doesn't really have anything to do up until the very end when it's like, oh yeah, by the way, Ginny's the one who's been cursed and yada yada yada. It's like, who was Ginny again?
yeah,
Oh yeah, his stupid sister, Ron's stupid sister. I should say. I don't make it seem like Harry's doing anything weird. Uh, but I think I may have just figured out why Harry Potter didn't work for me or never caught on, because I see it was released November 2002 in the good old US of A. And by then, Star Wars Episode 2 and Spider Man had definitely won 7-year-old Peter over. So I think we have a answer, ladies and gentlemen, on why I just never cared.
yeah. That's a big year. John Williams scoring Harry Potter, which I mean, didn't even touch on this, but the themes that he did for this one,
Mm.
remarkable. So he double dipped with Star Wars Attack of the Clones and this one. I think I'd heard something in a podcast that said he kind of mixed in some music from Attack of the Clones and Chamber, or vice versa, the other way around. So I'm like, okay, I guess you can plagiarize yourself. I mean, is there anything against that? But
No
yeah,
one questions it.
you don't question it. It's John Williams. Who are we to question John Williams? Maybe the greatest composer of all time. All right. But yeah, it feels like this one, like you said, long-winded, but it's still a good time. There's still some fun stuff to talk about. We got our introduction into Dobby, um, which Dobby and Jenny, kind of looking at them, honestly, they're a little bit more, they have bigger roles in the books. Dobby, in the movies, he doesn't show up again till Deathly Hallows Part 1. But in the books, he shows
Right.
up
I was,
in Goblet, Order, Prince, and Hallows.
yeah, because I was like, oh, I like this little guy, especially at the end when Harry reverse Uno's Draco's stupid dad to free the guy. I was like, oh, cool. We're gonna have this because again, I don't remember these movies that well. I was like, oh, cool. This guy will be running around doing Dobby stuff, and then like uh prisoner, and then Goblet passes. I'm like, where's my little elf friend guy? And I was like, oh, I guess he died. I guess he got pooched. He died on the way to his home planet off screen. And then yeah, then you're right. He just appears at the beginning of that one. It's like, oh, the guy's there, and they kill him at the end.
Yeah.
Spoilers.
Yeah, he plays a much bigger role in those movies. Like I think in Goblet, he's the one that gives the gillyweed to or makes a suggestion to Harry instead of Neville. In Order, he helps him out with the rumor requirement. Half-Blood Prince, when Harry is on this Draco is evil plot, he sends Dobby to tell him, and then of course we have Deathly Hallows in which he kicks the bucket. And then Jenny's kind of the same way. Jenny in the book is a whole lot cooler later on. So and she does a lot more stuff. Like she eventually becomes a Quidditch star later on. So yeah, both of those you can kind of take a look at them in this film. Like they have much bigger roles in the books compared to the movies. But yeah, Dobby causing mischief there at the beginning. You have the house breakout there, which it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. You know, if you're the Dursleys, you probably want to be rid of Harry, but then you put bars on his windows to keep him there. Uh, okay, you know, I thought you wanted to be rid of the guy. Uh, so it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense there. And then you know, of course, we get our new professor, Lockhart, who you know, I think I'd heard Rowling had kind of based this off of somebody that she knew in her own life uh, at some point. So I don't know if the person ever found out, but probably not a good indictment on them with Lockhart
I
just
feel
being
like
a buffoon.
I feel like we've all known a Lockhart, that kind of giant expletive talker who makes himself basically your manager at your job. But
Yeah,
like
and
in a rather inoffensive way. It's not like, abusive. It's just like this guy's trust with a higher salary than me. How?
he's out here making tests about himself. He's got a moving painting of him painting himself. It's like, okay, narcissistic much? Yeah. I also, you know, Dumbledore. Uh, you hired this guy, you know, a guy that has faked doing all this stuff as a teacher. Does he not care about the kids' education? Because I mean, first year, I don't know how much he could have done about that first year because first year they literally had Voldemort teaching. This year they get,
Right.
you know, a fraud. You know, third year in Azkaban they get Lupin. It's a good teacher, but just had the effect of Snape outing him as a werewolf. Um, so you know, if Snape didn't do that. Yeah, you know, maybe he could have had him.
Let's real just probably had not the best budget for hiring, so but we don't want to put that on screen, so it's just for us to figure out.
I mean, and when you've had so many Defense Against the Dark Arts teachers not make it through multiple years, I guess so. You just gotta say like, you know, just come here, just come here, or maybe increase it, you know, because you know you're only going to be there 1 year.
The qualified people see on their LinkedIn, it's like that job opened again. That seems sus. I'm gonna avoid Hogwarts. Just doesn't seem like it's all right. And it's not because J.K. Rowling introduces a character named Moaning Myrtle, which the moment I heard, I was like, "Oh, did I hear that? I rewind that a bit. Did I? Sorry, I get the Roku out. Rewind that a bit. Did they say what I think I heard? I was like, oh,
Yeah,
I know it's Britain, so maybe it doesn't mean the in the connotation as us winners, the Americans. But I was like, oh, it's a kids movie.
oh yeah,
Again, maybe because now I'm 29, I'm infinitely more dirty minded than 7-year-old me was. But how that slide? How can that slide?
yeah. You had her introduced and the storyline with her, and then you also had Polyjuice Potion, in which you know, the Polyjuice effect. You know, I think it got a little bit better in Deathly Hallows Part One with the series and Seven Harrys, but you know, it's not too bad here. Some effects age better than others, and this is the early 2000s. But yeah, Polyjuice notoriously difficult to make, and I think you know it's just the book to make it was in the restricted section in the book, and the movie said like, "Hey, we can just go grab it off the shelf. You know, we're good to go. You know, make this potion to impersonate these two Slytherins. You know." But yeah, there's also a couple of funny other decisions in here. You know, with them getting to Hogwarts. Well, you know, Harry ending up in Nocturne Alley, that subsect of Diagon Alley. Um, there's a sequence there with Draco and his dad where you kind of find out a little bit more about them and like they're still up to no good. But you know, you had that sequence and then you have him going to you had the barrier to Hogwarts, you know, kind of blocked off. And it's a good point. You figure that the Weasley senior and Mr. and Mrs. Weasley would come back through, and you could just say like, "Hey, the barrier for some reason we couldn't get through," or you could send a letter. It's like, no, let's just go get the flying car. Let's just go get the flying car. And then Harry, 5 minutes later, when it's already up in the air, it's like, oh, hey, wait a minute, my guy. You know, these people don't know what a flying car is. They haven't seen that yet. You might want to turn on the cloaking device.
It's a very fun scene. The drive, especially the aftermath when Snape's just like, Dumbledore, if you do not suspend these suckers, I'm gonna flip. And Dumbledore's like, all right, bet, idiot.
You're in my debt. What are you gonna do?
You're supposed to be out of this, idiot.
Yeah. Yeah.
With the knowledge of like what comes next, is I the fact that Snape stayed on to help Harry secretly this whole time, even though he's just a POS. I mean, Snape's probably the biggest G in this whole series. Because I think any reasonable human being would just go up to Dumbledore. It's like, I'm going to another school.
I mean, there are other wizarding schools, so he could have done that. I mean, he could have. It's like, I'm peacing out. I'm gone. Um, yeah, no. So we had the Polyjuice, that effect. We had Aragog and the Basilisk, and I mean, seeing the giant spider, it's not too fun. You know?
I feel for the Basilisk because literally every time I was able to get a student, like there's always a technicality where they survive. It's just like guy's just trying to live his life, and he can't get lucky. He's got the stupid kid, the Macaulay Culkin looking kid with the camera,
Yeah,
uh, your Hufflepuff kid who like I think the puddle was his get out of jail free card.
yeah.
Hermione with the magnifying glass. Like this poor guy's just trying to kill people and he can't.
You know what? He's not even trying to eat them. He's just
Yeah,
like, I'll just kill them, and I'll peace out. I'll go back into the school's pipes.
I kind of respect that. To the point.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the basilisk and all that stuff. Yeah, um giant spider or a giant snake down there and living in a chamber with the school's pipes, kind of weird. Um and Salazar Slytherin, you had that, and you had the Harry speaking parcel tongue, and that whole thing being kind of introduced, where he talks to the snake in the duel. And Harry, this is a joke, but I think between all the book readers, that Harry meets his one true love, and it's not Ginny, it's Expelliarmus in in that book. So you have him speaking parcel tongue, and everybody's kind of taken aback by it, and you kind of like, okay, you know this is interesting, and it kind of like, okay, is he the heir of Slytherin? So you have that, but you also have this diary, which, who loves books? Who loves this diary that it suddenly popped up in a bathroom? It was like, you know what? I'm going to take this diary that I found in this bathroom, and I don't know. It's just really kind of funny to think about. That kind of Harry kind of got catfished by Lord Voldemort here with that memory riddle, because when they get down to the chamber, is Harry sees Ginny's like, "Oh, Tom, hey, listen, my friend, come and help me with this. I got my sister's my best friend's sister here dead." It's like, yo, why are you not helping me? So it's just like, yeah, it's kind of funny that there at the end, Voldemort kind of catfishes Harry with that the diary, and the whole going back thing. I think was kind of interesting, kind of a interesting way to kind of tell that story with Myrtle, and what happened 50 years ago, and us thinking, well, is it Hagrid that did this, or is this all a lie? So I don't know, but yeah, it felt very long-winded, but I thought it went pretty well for the most part. But there's a lot of laying the foundation for a couple other stuff down the road, especially in the latter two books.
Yeah, for something that's this long, you would have thought that okay, maybe they're expanding a little more on this universe, the school, and like technically they are, but again, it's really laser focused now on the idea of Gryffindor, and we're really starting to get into like, okay, for the rest of this films, you're just gonna focus on these three kids, and you're gonna have to like it.
Yeah.
It's like I think Goblets when they had the dance where Snape's outside, he catches a Ravenclaw and a Hufflepuff getting it on, and he's like, "Ah, minus 10 points, you idiots!" It's like that's the most Ravenclaw and Hufflepuff had in these last four films when you think about it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. So I'm kind of looking at a couple other things, kind of talking about, the whole finding out, oh, wide open Tennessee touchdown. There we go. But make that 27-3. But yeah, thinking back on this one, the whole destroying the diary before, you even know it's a Horcrux, and just like the wherewithal to just be like, you know what, I'm going to destroy this, and you inadvertently destroy a Horcrux in which you didn't know at that point. So you're already up 1-0 in the Horcrux game. And honestly, Harry at this point, 3-0 against Voldemort. He beat him once as a baby, and now as an 11, 12-year-old,
Mhm.
he's 3-0. And Voldemort has some time to come back from a 3-0 deficit, and
Yeah,
let's just say it doesn't happen.
I say for he who should not be named, he kind of sucks at his job.
He's beefing with a kid, and he loses.
Beef of a fifth grader here.
Yeah, oh man. But yeah, he also had the Phoenix in this movie,
Mhm.
in which there's a funny story behind this. Richard Harris on the set thought it was an actual real creature, but it was an animatronic, and he was like, "It's amazing, the things that how they can train these things." And he just like, "Nah, there's no way this is an animatronic." And they showed him, was like, "Get out of here." That's how lifelike it was. And that's kind of crazy because in these movies, there's a kind of a mix of practical and visual effects. And they went practical with the Phoenix. I think they did a little bit of that with Aragog and the Basilisk too. So it's kind of nice to see that mix in there. Also, you mentioned Lucius, Draco's dad. I
Mhm.
still find it funny that the man literally, like, I don't know how many feet away from Dumbledore's office, once he finds out that Harry he's inadvertently free Dobby, he's like, you know what? I'm gonna cast the killing curse on Harry,
Yeah,
20 feet outside Dumbledore's office. It's like my guy lost all situational awareness right there. It's like, dude, what are you doing?
I mean, he's gonna blindly reveal himself to be a Death Eater in two films, and then show up to the Wizard Cup later. So like this guy, he is the definition of above the law.
He
He's just
really
buying his
is.
way out of this.
He really is. Malfoy's probably should honestly all be in jail with all they get up to.
I say
But
no wonder he hates Draco. Draco sucks in comparison. Getting punched by Hermione, looking like a fool. Meanwhile, this guy's just like, I'm gonna murder a kindergartner outside the principal's office. So what? Sue me.
yeah, yeah, and then
That's what the
Dobby
kids
just
call
blasts
big
him
D energy
back.
right there. Yeah,
Yeah, so it's just like weird move there by Lucius Malfoy. He's like, I'm gonna kill the chosen one by the most powerful wizard in the world's office. You know, really lack of awareness right there. You mentioned Draco getting punched. I guess that could be a good transition to Azkaban, unless there's anything left on Chamber you want to touch on real quick.
no, let's get to the goat film.
Yeah, this book, third book, all teenagers now, so you get some of that teenage angst coming in now. Quaron coming in, and really kind of different stylistic type of change. And yeah, a lot of people really love this movie. It's stylistically, artistically, a lot of people think this is the movie that's up at the top as far as like from a creative direction and what they did with this. And like, hey, you can take these films pretty seriously with what Quaron was able to do. Like he did a lot of interesting stuff with this film.
A wild choice of a director because pretty much a mostly Spanish exclusive director up until then. I think he had like a few films before that were in English, but after this, he goes to make Children of Men and then Academy Award winner Gravity and Roma. I mean, it's almost funny to see like that name attached to a Harry Potter film, but it definitely shows because again, never read the book, so I assume it's a good written book to begin with. But yeah, him and let me get the screenwriter's name, Steve Kloves. Yeah, they just they went all in here for the third entry of 8 films.
Yeah, I mean they really did, and you had a lot that you were going to have to introduce because you had Lupin that you were going to introduce. You had Sirius, and you had to replace Dumbledore in this film with Richard Harris passing away, and then Michael Gambon comes in. Let me ask you, how do you feel about Gambon as Dumbledore? Because there's some people that have their kind of nitpicks about him later on. Of course, there's that one big noticeable nitpick in Goblet of Fire, in which he's supposed to say something very calmly, and he doesn't in that one. But how do you feel about him as a new Dumbledore coming in?
I didn't mind it, especially as it goes on. Although there, because again, when you have 2 films of Harris to introduce, you kind of see like, okay, this is how the Dumbledore character is gonna go. Fairly reserved, friendly demeanor kind of one, and now it's kind of more sassy as it goes on, especially toward the end. Like this man is just, again, he knows he's dying, so he's just balling at that point. But yeah, again, I don't mind too much when you're making a drastic change like that. Don't worry about, is the accent right, is the overall look, demeanor right. I'm not that picky. I enjoy him, although I think the way Harris introduced it kind of just in my mind was like, yeah, that should have been Dumbledore, but whatever.
Yeah, I think with this, like, he definitely feels more eccentric
Mhm.
as Dumbledore. I just think of that when Ron's in the hospital with that leg injury, and he just like pats the leg. When Ron's like, my leg nearly got chewed off, and here's the professor, the most powerful wizard, just like slapping it continually.
I wonder if at the time he saw Lord of the Rings and saw Gandalf and was just like, okay, this is how I should be playing this character. Because there is a lot, because Gandalf is definitely a bit of a troll in how he approaches things. So
Yeah.
maybe that played into a bit, but again, when your actor dies and you are on a pretty brutal schedule of uh, filming, you know, you just got to move on with the punches.
Yeah. So I mean, I feel like in later films got a little bit better with the uh with the Dumbledore character, especially as you kind of get into Order and Prince. Of course, Prince ultimately at the end there dies. Spoiler alert. But yeah, I think of one moment in Order where he's kind of like that. But other than that, I feel like he got a little bit better. It might just have been the direction too, and like you said, just kind
Right.
of like seeing all these other portrayals like a Gandalf and say like, okay, dude, I maybe want to try to do that. So I don't know. I mean, I definitely think he does get a little bit better later on, but yeah, this film, you start out here with Harry blowing up his aunt. Shout out to him, and also the Minister of Magic just saying like, you know what, that's fine. We're not gonna say like you did something wrong for blowing up your aunt and like send her into the stratosphere. So it's like it's fine. But there's also a couple other things, like you had werewolves, with Lupin come into play. You had this the Marauders map, a very an artifact that a lot of book readers really love, and how it came into play because it really kind of it doesn't go much into it with the movies, but it really is kind of a connective tissue with Harry and his dad, who was a creator of that map, along with Lupin and Sirius and then Pettigrew. So it's just kind of like it's a really big artifact there, and he introduced that. So a lot of introduction here, and a lot of we talk about stylistically. I'm thinking about one shot in particular early on in which Mr. Weasley he's talking to Harry about Sirius, and it's I forget it's in the Three Broomsticks, but while they're talking, you have in the background all these posters of Sirius's wanted poster in the
Mm.
background, and I'm like, he's kind of you know uh, hovering over this movie as we think at that point. He's a bad guy. He wants to go and kill
Right.
Harry. So I really like, that part. I also think of the one where he's kind of like this shot of Harry standing in this big long hallway and just kind of like standing there alone. And that's kind of how he feels, because of, he can't go into Hogsmeade. He feels kind of alone here in this movie. Really kind of emphasize that. But yeah, Caron did a whole lot of stuff with this one. The geography kind of changed, like the Willow and Hagrid's Hut are in different places. Places change. I believe they've also said the uniforms you could be more customizable with those type of with the students and what they would wear it like. And then also, this is really funny. I remember watching special features. The three main characters, Caron asked them to do an essay, and he said, write them as you were characters. And Rupert was like, didn't do this because, like, well, I felt like Ron wouldn't do his. It's like, you know what? That's a good point. So it's just like, yeah. So I mean, take a look at all the new stuff. I didn't even mention the Dementors. Think about all the new stuff. Which one really caught your eye?
Oh, the I completely forgot about the Dementors. So when I saw them basically for the first time again, I was like, "This is the greatest creation I'm currently witnessing." They're a nightmare machine, but I almost want to go drinking with one.
I don't know how that would
Bring
work.
bring Simo Peter back for one night only. Yeah,
I,
just overall, I think it's a very good mystery film in a way because the whole Voldy stuff almost feels like it's not happening in this film.
yeah, he took a
Like
year
there's almost
off.
just yeah, which I guess help makes with the reveal of Goblet really more impactful because you kind of think like, oh, I guess the big bad's been defeated in the pit the underworld of Hogwarts. Nope, psych, idiot. But yeah, here the reveal the great map scene earlier when he's like, I see this Pettigrew guy on here. Is the map broken? Lupin's just like, nah, yeah, the map's broke. Meanwhile, he's just panicking, and I will say the introduction of Sirius was a bit weird because they did present it as almost, at least from my perspective, I took it as they were trying to present, oh, Lupin and Sirius were in on it the whole time against Harry, but then the reveal happens with Pettigrew.
Yeah,
It was just weird to me, like why they're like kind of playing with the kid rather than just being like, hey, I know it doesn't look good. This guy's on your side. That guy's a POS. Let's kill him.
yeah. It's like, classic movie trope. Hey, let's let characters talk ambiguously for a few minutes before we
Mm-hmm.
have the big twist, you know?
Right.
Um, yeah, it definitely felt that way, reading the book. It was like, wait, what is going on here? Because there's a lot of pieces here, but they're not connecting at the moment. And we need the ultimate piece here and Pettigrew to reveal himself and kind of figure out, okay, what is going on here? So yeah, I mean, the twist was kind of crazy there. And then you had Lupin's whole werewolf transformation there, which I mean, that's kind of an amazing scene right there because it's kind of like a wide shot, and you have Lupin, and it kind of zooms in on him in his eyes. You see the full moon, and he can't do anything about it. His eyes turn bloodshot, and you see like, oh no, he's about to turn. And then it happens, and then I do kind of like, it goes back to Snape with the whole bad guy, good guy type of thing. He goes in and shields the kids, you know.
Yeah. Homie Snape, made the promise. I guess way back in the day to Dumbledore, it's like, hey, we're bringing Lily's kid here. I know James is the one who got the score, but listen, I need your help. He's like, all right, and he just like stone cold Steve Austin kicks down that door. Good guy Snape in these later films. Harry just knocks him out, and Snape is still just like, I should strangle him, but I'll keep helping.
Like, Lucius, can I have some advice? How'd you get that close to using the killing curse on him? Um, yeah,
He goes to Dumbledore. It's like I need a raise.
please. Um, or at least get me out of this situation in which I
Yeah.
don't have to worry about it. But yeah, and then you have the whole time turner plot and see how that's used. And that doesn't come up again. I think in Order of the Phoenix they all get destroyed. So it's like, yeah, we can't have this big of a plot device left around,
Right.
because yeah, people just keep on going back for time turners, and it's like we got to reverse this.
I'll say you're only allowed one end game before it gets too much.
Right? Yeah, you got to get rid of those because otherwise you're just gonna have a big MacGuffin on your hand that you don't know what to do with. And it's like, well, why can't we just use this and make sure Cedric doesn't die, and you do all that. So yeah, I definitely, and then the mentors thing at the end where they go back in time and Harry thinks it's his dad. It's like, no, you
Oh,
had it in you all along. The whole Patronus thing, and just learning all that, that's a really advanced piece of magic. Like in later books, when Harry's on trial, they're just like, wait, you're able to produce a full Patronus? And they're like, man, some wizard adults can't even do that. That they're not capable of that. I was like,
I,
man,
I just did the I just did the math, assuming they were filming this in 2003, which I would presume they were. Radcliffe would have been 14. That's some pretty strong acting from him, and of course with Kieran's, a tour direction, like that whole scene is just it's almost feels out of place in the overall filmography that's going to become this series because it's just so it's almost got like an epic feel to it and like a lot of emotion going on that you're like, huh, this Harry Potter film took a turn.
yeah, definitely did. I think one last thing, uh, unless you want to add anything, the whole Boggart training scene in um in the Defense Against Dark Arts class, I thought was really kind of fun. You see Lupin really alive there, and then you have the whole Snape getting in Neville's in his grandmother's clothes. It's like shout out to Neville for that one. It made me think, Dementors and Boggarts, here. Boggarts are your worst fear. Dementors, they kind of like make you never feel cheerful again, which us being Penn State Tennessee fans, we know what that's like. It feels like we've had Dementors around us here for years. Um,
Hell,
as far
we
as
we we see the Dementors on our own accord. We're not forced to.
yeah, they're just hanging around us because of the teams we root for. Um, so I don't know. This may get a little bit too deep on the Zoom recording. We only have a few minutes left. The Boggart recording, the thing you I guess are kind of most fearful of. What would you say would be yours if you had to stand face to face and cast ridiculous?
Oh, it's funny. It's Michael Myers. I've seen all the films, but for some reason that mask still messed me up. I don't know what it is. It's like it's just the dead black eyes, the weird white paint. And it's funny when I went to Universal's Halloween Horror Nights 2 years ago, they had the original Halloween as the house, and I was completely fine around. It's like, oh, maybe it was just in my head. But every now and then I wake up, that guy's in my nightmares a lot. So I think that would be it.
I'm trying to think what would be mine. I mean, I couldn't make a joke in here. Like I remember in one of the Fantastic Beasts films, they show that kind of scene in one of the characters is like an office desk and he's like, I don't want to work an office job. So um I don't know. I really don't know. It may just be something where it's just like, you know, ah man, I really had to ask this question and I don't have an answer for it.
Hey, you
I,
got something out of me.
yeah, I got something now to think. I kind of feel like I asked although it's not that deep of a question. Well, it might be, but on the coaches show, I asked the quarterbacks like, "What's the best piece of advice?" He's like, "I don't really know. That's a hard question." And I'm like, "Man, I didn't even mean to stump myself here, and I did." So everybody, I guess that will do it here for part one of our Harry Potter podcast series. Next time on part two, we're diving into Goblet, Order, and Half Blood Prince. It's going to be a fun one because I have some thoughts on Goblet and Prince, as a lot of other people do, as far as what was in the books and what was in the movie. So buckle up, everybody. Peter, this was fun. Looking forward to part two, man.
Yeah, we'll see how long I can remember these films.
Everybody, again, that'll do it for us here. Be sure to go check us out where you guys get your podcast. Check us out on YouTube. Check us out on Twitter and all that good stuff. So everybody, be locked in for this series. We got two more parts coming up. You don't want to miss those, so continue to check out that entertainment feed. But everybody, thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the podcast, and we will talk to you all next time.